Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so quick disclaimer before we get started. So, information provided here by our association, CAREIA, the Central Alberta Real Estate Investors Association, with coaching sessions, presentations, any workshops, is not a substitute for professional advice, such as any lawyer, and we have one in the room here today, Mr. David Brant, so you can get legal advice from him, not me. Mortgage professional, speaking of which, Danelle is on her way. She's actually just doing a 30-hour fast right now, so she'll be coming here. She might be a little cranky when she shows up, so just take it easy on her. Contractor, a real estate agent, or any other real estate supporting profession. The information presented is learned material from legitimate real estate investing resources and can be subjective to matters of opinion. So basically, any attendee of our meetings, presentations, events, or any CAREIA member has full intent of releasing a liability from ourselves, the organization. We don't guarantee the outcomes for any investor utilizing the information we present, as each situation is unique due to the actions and diligence by the investor and uncontrollable circumstances such as economic factors or unforeseeable discoveries upon purchasing properties, even after professional diligence. Long story short, don't do something silly at the end of the day because you hear somebody in the room has success with a specific strategy in a specific area at a specific point in time. Doesn't mean that you will. So please exercise due diligence at all points and times. So today's agenda, my name is Sean Claremont, for anybody that I haven't met here before, so I'm going to be doing the introduction for CAREIA. Right after that, we're actually going to be going around the room and doing introductions for everybody as well. Mr. David Brant with Altalaw is going to be our sponsor presenter here for the day. Shortly after that, we're going to be taking a break, and then Mr. Brian Banks is actually going to be doing the investor presentation for us today as well. Right after that, we're going to be going into open discussion, deal presentations, if anybody has anything that they either want to discuss as a group or any potential deals they have to offer to the room or something they're looking to fund, and we will take it from there. So, at CAREIA, our mission is to be the premier real estate investing association for Central Alberta, and we have a principal focus on education, networking, and creative opportunities. The vision that we are trying to achieve as part of the organization, and what we really hope that everybody, should they so desire anyways, to achieve in the room, is to really attain financial freedom through real estate and investing, which is ultimately, I'm assuming, why most people are here. Some of our sponsors, so Broder Homes, A Place to Mortgage, Cindy Dooley as our realtor sponsor, Certa Property Inspections. Alex actually came in a couple months ago and did an inspections presentation. It was really good. FBC Accountants come up here from Calgary usually once a year, discuss and everything else. The Realty Store, Matt Laverne, Property Management Company. Altalaw, of course, just like we mentioned, and Solomon Financial Group, who is, of course, great enough to offer us this fantastic facility to be able to do these presentations in. So our management team at CAREIA, Cindy, who's in the audience, sitting in the back there, realtor with Realty Executive Central Alberta, and also a CAREIA director and the president of our association. Myself, I'm basically just a private investor right now with Claremont Capital Corporation, the name of my company, the executive director for CAREIA, and part of the management team. Danelle, who I mentioned, will be coming here shortly. She's a senior mortgage associate with A Place to Mortgage, director as well as our corporate secretary. And Kevin Rodoulier, who's an independent investor and also our treasurer for the organization. We mentioned this kind of briefly at the last meeting, but we do have to have our first annual general meeting. It's going to be coming up this summer of 2019 and should have more information to you guys hopefully at the next presentation. So just a couple little things about getting the most from your membership. So our meetup page has now got 349 members in it. Fantastic. That thing seems to be growing well every single month. Again, most people typically hear about our organization from the meetup page. I know we got a couple new faces in the room today. Did you hear meetup primarily? Is that how you heard about it? Or? Yeah, perfect. Good. Well, at least it's working then. So, other than that, our Facebook page, which is actually getting considerably more popular as time goes on. So we went from 121 to 133 likes. So making progress as time goes on. And our Facebook group, and basically, if you have a CAREIA membership, you automatically have, you basically have the rights to gain access to our private Facebook group. And in that group, you can post deals. You can respond to deals that people post there. We do some different networking events for that, even beyond kind of just what goes on in the room on a monthly basis. A couple things to note. The name did actually change. I think it's now the Alberta Landlord and Property Owner Tenant Info page. So that is basically functions as a tenant registry and an information resource for any landlords out there, as well as the Central Alberta Landlords Association, CALA, which is kind of like a sister group to CAREIA. And again, if you haven't used these pages or if you're not a member of them already, I'd highly suggest it, particularly if you are a landlord. One of the things that actually ends up happening in these is that any landlords, when they have a bad experience with a tenant, will actually post basically the full details about what exactly happened in that situation. So it's a very good quick check for due diligence before you're going to rent out a property to somebody. Let's see if they actually destroyed somebody else's property before. So if you are currently not a member of CAREIA, why should you join? Well, ultimately, you're going to be getting a fantastic return on your hard-earned money because you get infinite returns on any knowledge and utilizing what you learn. So again, as a group, we're here to provide education and guidance, leverage, particularly when you can utilize people in the group, get some local networking, as well as there's been a number of deal opportunities that have kind of came up in this as well. So I think Warren Buffett put it the best, and he basically said the best investment that you can make is an investment in yourself. The more you learn, the more you'll earn. So if you've been sitting on the fence and thinking about it, feel free to come speak with myself, speak with Cindy, speak with some of the other members in the room. Don't just take it from me. Actually determine if everybody else is getting value out of their membership, and we can take the conversation from there. So we're going to dive right into introductions. So what we'd like to do is start going down the room. We'll start with Ryan. And basically let us know who you are, what's your goal with real estate and or investing, specifically what are you hoping to get out of it, and then ultimately what is your biggest hurdle to your next deal?
My name is Brant. I'm a full-time real estate investor. My company's name is Stratford Martin, and we have a website that has lots of cool before and after videos and everything. And so, yeah, I've just been doing that full-time for a couple of years now. And as far as hurdle, I'm clearing up some inventory. I have 2 places left right now on the market, and I'm starting to seek out new deals. The Edmonton market's been a little bit wonky, but I think there's some good availability right now. And so looking to create some new opportunities for the spring.
Thank you. Jocelyn?
Oh, Sean. I'm Jocelyn McGatt, and I'm just here to share curiosity because this is all I hear about day in and out.
Perfect.
I'm Michelle Custer, and we've got 3 properties. We've been doing this for a while, probably for 4 years. We're farmers. What our long-term goal is to get probably about 4 more properties. We specialize in the legal based suites, and that's about it.
I'm Courtney, and I'm from Sundry, and I'm a full-time real estate investor and a full-time mom, 3-year-old. So my biggest hurdle is time, and I'm just looking to learn more about the business and looking to expand.
Perfect.
Hello, I'm Les McGregor and my wife Jane. We have a house here in town. We rent upstairs and downstairs, and we also have a house in Springbrook. We have a suite in the basement, and we have not rented out yet. So that's what we have right now.
Hi, Gail Chappelle, my husband Terry, and we're out of Innisfail. We have some 4plexes out here, so we're to buy and hold. We're also looking to get into multi-families a little more on the commercial side of things, and our biggest struggle right now is just finding the right deal, basically.
I'm Keith. This is my grandson, Grayson. I've talked about him a fair amount down here. So, we're still trying to learn and get going. I think one of our, to get started, the biggest hurdle seems to be to get to the point where you think you know enough, you can jump in and do something, right? And there's always that, I forget what they call it.
Analysis by analysis.
Yeah, right? And you just kind of sit there and you wonder. So I just keep watching and learning, and hopefully we're going to get there, right?
Cindy?
Oh, hi. I'm Cindy Julie, realtor with Realty Executives Alberta Elite. I'm passionate for creative real estate investing. Been doing it since 2014. Have 4 properties myself right now. Half suited, half duplex in Sylvan. It's actually the only suited. That was acquired by agreement for sale, so great strategy there. I have a townhouse in Red Deer and a full house as well here. My goal is comfortable cash flow and financial freedom, and my biggest hurdle would be mortgage qualified. So I've kind of stepped up my game, and I'm going into commercial real estate right now and multi-family residential, to be that much more easier when they qualify the building as opposed to yourself. So that's what I'm trying to conquer this year and hopefully get a multi-family under my wing.
You were just part of a 28 unit deal, was it? 7 fourplexes?
Yeah, I did help Gordon Eisler and Andrew Workington in 7 fourplex acquisition. We just closed on that sale and currently working on a bunch more fourplexes and a 23 unit apartment building.
That's a big deal. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Sean?
Sean Impey, I'm a mortgage broker with University Financial, mortgage architects, been investing about 20 years, 25 properties, about 60 doors, multifamily condos, houses. Not buying much these days. All my real estate is focused on helping investors like you guys get money in different ways, creative ways, private money, figuring out a plan to get the next mortgage for that next rental property or whatever you want to do. So my rules, the mortgage rules are a little tough on the inside. The mortgages on the lease side are private. Pretty well anybody can get money, they got equity in properties. That's it.
Perfect. Thanks. David, I know you're presenting, but did you want to say a couple words there?
No, I can say that. I guess my biggest goal with real estate for investing is just to help clients get into it.
Yeah.
Make sure they're protected. And I'm not actively involved in investing myself at this point. I'm still kind of learning and feeling out to kind of building some equity. That's my biggest hurdle right now.
Yeah, perfect. Brian?
Everybody, Brian Banks, company's Free Best Properties. I'm a full-time real estate investor, but focus on legal basement suited houses, as well to sell and to hold. Our goal is our mission is to help as many people as possible create freedom in their lives and generate long-term wealth for families. And our biggest hurdle right now, with finding the next deal, we're trying to close up to, we got one single family flip that's on the market right now. So getting that off the table and a suited house that we're holding with partners right now. We're just in the works of a joint venture agreement to close that one up and move forward and fund the next deal.
All right, thanks.
Royce Hepburn. Just getting into this, trying to educate myself, immerse myself in the business. Just trying to learn as much as I can. And my hurdle, I guess, would be finding the time to actually get out there and make it happen. You know, so.
My name is Chris. I'm a technology enthusiast. I'm passionate about building communities and changing lives through technology management. I just started a business called W Connect that looks after WordPress websites on a monthly basis. And I'm also freshly separated from my wife after 10 years. So now I've got a whole house to myself that I need to start with people and possibly turn into an employment site. So that's my biggest struggle.
Perfect. And Chris was actually good enough to do attendance for us today. So if you haven't already signed in with Chris, please do that. If you've been here before, we'll most likely have your email address and your phone number. But if this is your first time, if you can provide that, it's just for information, just for our database. So. Okay, well, we're going to be jumping right into it. So, Mr. David Brant, lawyer with Altalaw here in Red Deer. David's been actually a big part of my business for the last, almost for the last year now. I think we've probably done about a dozen different transactions, one home sale, a lot of work in the second mortgage space that Dale's been facilitating for us. So, it's been a fantastic resource for all of that. And I will let him pump his own tires when he gets up here. So.
So thank you for coming, spending your Saturday afternoon with us.
You're welcome.
Maybe if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself to start.
Okay, so pretty basics. I grew up in southwestern Ontario, small little city there. Finished my schooling there and got accepted to the University of Western Ontario for law school. Part of that acceptance, I got invited to a program for legal studies for Native people in Saskatoon at the U of S. And there I met a girl, and she was from Red Deer. And we kind of hit it off and did a bit of a long distance relationship thing while we both finished law school. And in 2008, I moved here full time. We got married, and I've been practicing with Altalaw ever since. Became a partner there in 2014. Primarily, my practice revolves around corporate commercial, real estate transactions, and wills and estates. All of that is relevant in terms of the real estate investment side of it in some way. Estates might not seem right, but there's a lot of estate sales that come up that are relevant to investors. Personally, my wife and I now have 4 small children running around in our house, so they keep us very busy. 4 little girls, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So we've planned that out, and before anybody asks me, we are done. There's no more on the horizon. I enjoy what I do and enjoy meeting new people, especially people that are involved in real estate investing, because I know those types of people are serious about, that financial freedom aspect. And I know they're going to be kind of clients that I'm going to get to know and grow with over the years. So.
Perfect. So so you explained how long you've been practicing. What's your fee policy like, if you can elaborate a little on that?
Yeah. So fees, everybody wants to know what a lawyer charges, and a lawyer doesn't want to tell them what they charge. But honestly, in the sphere of corporate and real estate, most of the transactions are kind of a tariff. So it depends on the size of the deal or what we're doing. I brought some sheets here, which have a little bit of information, especially when it comes to if you're buying or selling properties. There's kind of a chart on the back, which kind of will give you an idea of what the fees are, right? So, I mean, if you're looking at a $300,000 to $450,000 property, your fees are going to be about $925. If you're going to have a mortgage with that, you're going to have probably about an extra $500 there of disbursements and registration costs. So you got to do tax searches, and then you have to actually register mortgages, register the transfer of title, those types of things. In the corporate sphere, I mean, that would be something that if you're looking at, incorporating, if you're looking at getting a joint venture agreement done up, or a lease, or an option to purchase, those are the things you just want to talk to me or the lawyer you're dealing with up front, so that you know what those fees are going to be.
Okay, good to know. So, with your experience in creative real estate strategies, what are some of the strategies that you've had experience working on and with?
Yeah, I think Sean touched on it a little bit over the last year. He kind of has kept me busy and learning a lot about creative strategies, and he keeps me learning and involved with that. So a lot of second mortgages. We do a lot of creative lending in terms of through RRSPs and how to register those. We can secure those by way of mortgage and by way of a security agreement. And then when somebody comes in and says they're looking at rental properties, then we also start the discussion in terms of whether or not that's going to be a straight lease, or if they want an option to purchase at the end of the day. And that's a creative way to deal with basically locking in the price today. And you can usually kind of increase the value of what you might get on the market right now. So that's a creative way to kind of increase some value and set the purchase date to 3 years down the road.
Hopefully in a better market.
Yeah.
2 years from what it is right now.
Yeah, and you're both the tenant and the landlord are taking a bit of risk there, because they don't know what the market's going to be.
Yeah, but you can predict that.
Yeah.
Hopefully it gets better. I mean, we do have historical market trend cycles, so we're anticipating 2021 that we can see some significant changes that we can, see in the market. So kind of keep your finger on the pulse and watch the market in that sense. I think I asked you this before, and I'm not sure what your answer was, but do you have template schedules that clients can fill out with pertinent information to particular strategies like agreements for sale, rent to own, or joint ventures?
Yeah, I mean, I usually have a questionnaire that I'll sit down with them. I think in terms of a template, usually when somebody comes to me and they're saying, well, I'm going to be investing going forward and I want to get some tenants and I'm doing basement suites or whatever that is, usually we'll work together. We'll get them a good template of a lease that they can use, over and over. I'm not expecting them to come to me every time to fill in names and blanks and amounts and all of that. So I want them to feel comfortable. It's the times when things kind of change with, with the market, with legislation, like cannabis recently, right? That's the times where if you've got a template, you might want to just take it to your lawyer and have them take a look at it and see what new things can be put in place, right? I know a lot of landlords nowadays are concerned about tenants growing cannabis in their homes. For some reason, there's a concern that that's going to decrease the value of it. So you can put clauses in there that prevents that and makes it a point of default, right? So, yeah.
And I think you did mention too that it's working very closely with the realtor too to make sure that those terms are put in place when you come to do creative strategies. A term in there to say this purchase shall complete by way of agreement for sale with the schedule attached, and I do have those kinds of schedules. But if it's a joint venture, you kind of outline those with your realtor or yourself if you're more versed in doing it before. But there's ways of getting those incorporated into your purchase contracts.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the due diligence period in purchases, and what should clients know about due diligence and some of the due diligence items that we should consider?
Well, I think, to pump your tires a little bit, one of the big things for due diligence is working with a really good qualified realtor, right? Finding the properties, because they're going to be able to give you a really good idea of, the location and the type of tenants that you're going to be able to put in there, what the permits are, and they're going to be able to pull all of that stuff. Usually when a purchase deal comes onto my desk, most of the conditions have cleared. So they've already had the inspection done. The financing is already done. My job is just to make sure that it closes smoothly. There's usually sometimes a few hiccups, but if you're working with a good realtor, it's pretty smooth and they've taken care of all that stuff. They're going to make sure that that you have, like I just said, your inspection done, right? To make sure that there isn't any surprises with the property after the sale closes, because those can be really difficult to come back and try and deal with. Due diligence. Sorry.
I was going to maybe say what maybe on your role when it comes to condos and condo document reviews, if those are some of the.
Yeah, there's quite a bit more due diligence in relation to a condo purchase. So I don't know whether or not anyone's had experience with that, but there's rules that the condo board has to provide you with a slew of documents. So you have to be provided with all of the bylaws, with all of, a series of minutes from their meetings. And more importantly, you got to look at their financials as well as a report in terms of what their financial stability is and what their plan is going forward and how they're going to deal with, general maintenance and repairs. Usually they'll have a plan for when they have to repair roofs or, sidewalks, those types of things. Yeah. So sometimes you can find somebody, maybe you're comfortable enough to look at those and know what those mean. You can certainly bring them to a lawyer and, pay a little extra fee so that you can pour over them with them and make sure that it's comfortable. Make sure that they have a proper reserve fund. So condos should have money that they are storing in their reserve fund that's going to be used for those big repairs, but also if there's going to be emergencies. And if they don't have that and something comes up, what they can do is basically demand money. It's called a call for cash. And you don't really have a choice. You basically have to pay whatever the assessment is. Sometimes they'll break it up over a few years. But, I recently had a person buying a condo. We got the documents in. We're looking through it, and it turned out that there was going to be a special call for $5,000 a year for the next 5 years that nobody told the client about. So that's a huge thing. And part of that is that, they have to give that information to you before the deal closes. So it's a condition that they've reviewed it, they agree to what it says, and they can go forward. So due diligence with condos is a little bit more extensive, but obviously with a residential property, if you're using a good realtor, they're going to take care of that as well.
Very important, and especially good if to find a really good lawyer and even so a realtor when you are looking at condos. I just managed to work with a client last year who loved the venue building up on, I think it's 22nd Street, right? 22nd Street. And she just loved the building, and the condos in that building are very, very cheap right now. And she wanted to make an offer on one, but I told her that, from my knowledge and seeing some of the condo documents, it's very questionable. There's been some mold issues within the envelope, and just significant issues. And actually, last summer there was a $30,000 and $50,000 cash call on 2 of the units there. I don't know what the other units got, but I managed to steer her clear of that happened after the fact. So it's really important to do your due diligence when it comes to condos.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty large cash calls, 100, 150,000. So it's a big thing. In terms of like what my role is, and I think people, they tend to not want to call a lawyer because they think they're going to be put on the clock and there's going to be fees and all that stuff. But I'm pretty open. If you're involved in a deal and something is kind of not feeling right, then, grab my card, give me a call, and we can talk about it. I'm pretty open with, I've got a lot of realtor clients in Red Deer here in central Alberta. And, if they pull the title and they see something they're not really sure about, they'll shoot me an email or give me a call. And I don't have any issues with, kind of talking it through with them and helping them in that way. And I mean, you're still on that tariff. So, you don't have to worry about me sending you a bill for that.
And again, title searches are part of the due diligence as well, right?
Yeah, we do it at the closing stage. So like I said, after all the conditions are cleared, we're obviously ordering the title. We do the tax search. We do all of those things. But it's important that, like I said, a realtor's doing that before all of those conditions have cleared and you're tied into a contract so that you know what's going to appear, right?
Yeah, and be wary of all the registrations on title and make sure you know what they're about and third-party interests, and make sure that they'll be cleared, or whether you want to carry that on in a purchase, right? What should buyers and sellers consider when buying or selling privately?
What should they consider? I think that's a realtor question, probably. In terms of, really, I think, you look at location, you look at price, you look at condition. If it is something that you feel is, it's going to have a suited basement or something like that, you want to make sure that your realtor is pulling the permits, making sure everything's done properly, because you don't want to run into a problem where it's going to cost you an extra $15,000 to get everything fixed up, right? That's just a number I picked up. I don't know how much it would be, but
yeah, I guess, that's important. And when you're buying from a private seller, it's you have to be pretty knowledgeable with what you're getting into and what to look for. So, I would think that you maybe should consider involving at least a lawyer or a realtor to help you with that purchase, and being wary of what's all involved to make sure your interests are protected. Do you really need a lawyer if you sell your house privately?
Yes. You do, to purchase and sell, because obviously you want to make sure that everything is done properly. The searches are done, RPRs are reviewed, or title insurance is put in place, whichever is applicable. I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, but and especially if there's financing, you're not going to be able to be transferring money back and forth unless there's lawyers involved, right? So it's good for me right now. BC has more of a notary system where they have kind of phased out lawyers from the real estate kind of transactions, which may very well happen here eventually. But right now, the main thing is there's what we call trust rules. So we have to handle money under trust. So we have basically an obligation under our law society to what we can do with that money. And then when we send it over to the seller's lawyer, we basically put them on a whole list of trust conditions to say, okay, you can't release this money to your client unless you've done these things. Discharge the previous mortgage, discharge any other caveats or anything else that's on title, and any other rules that might be applicable, right? So we have to make sure that that's done properly, and if it's not done, that other lawyer is basically bound to not be able to do anything. And if he or she does, they could be under some serious fines from the Law Society. So yes, you should definitely be using a lawyer for sale and purchase of property.
Okay. What is an RPR and why is it necessary?
Okay, so RPR stands for Real Property Report, and what it is a survey of the property. So kind of an outdoor look in terms of where everything's located. It'll show you where the house is. It'll show you if there's any shop or garage built in the back. It'll show you your driveways. It'll show you even movable fences if they're on the property. Movable sheds. And it'll show you fence lines and all of those types of things. So basically, you want to make sure that when you're purchasing a property, everything is where it should be, and there's not going to be any issues. So on your title, you'll have what's called a utility right-of-way, which is a accepted encumbrance on your title, which we wouldn't ask anybody to discharge because the city wouldn't. And it just allows your power lines and all of those things to run underneath your property. So if somebody built a shop improperly in your backyard, and they didn't do the proper searches, and they didn't get the proper permits, and they built it right under a utility right away, theoretically, the city, if they had to do work on those lines, could tear down your garage, do the work, and then leave it as is. They don't have to compensate you for any damage that's caused. So an RPR would show that, right? And those are the types of things that when we see them on RPR, they cause some mayhem on closing. Doesn't happen very often. Now, your next question is probably going to be, what if I don't have an RPR that's up to date? And how do I resolve that on closing? Well, there's something that we call title insurance. So title insurance will basically cover you for any discrepancies on that survey that weren't known at the date of closing. So if you buy a house from a seller and they say, well, I just got a RPR 2 years ago, and I don't want to have to pay another $800 to get it. I'm going to give you this one from 2017. I will pay for your title insurance policy, which is usually about $200. And basically, if anything comes up down the road, the title insurance would cover. So if they had put a fence in within those 2 years and it didn't show up on the RPR, and we found out that it encroached on city land, and the city said, we want it torn down, well, your title insurance policy would cover to take the fence, move it back on the right property line, and you'd be covered. So that's an alternate way. And usually we say, well, if there's within 10 years, the RPR, and there's not major changes to that property, then usually we'll agree to, usually the realtor will suggest to agree to take the title insurance instead. As a second best option, yeah. Obviously, a new, fresh RPR showing the state of the property is your best coverage because you know exactly everything's in place, everything's correctly done, and you can use that when you go and sell the property. If you had one 10 years old, you took the title insurance, then you go and sell the property in 5 years, the new buyers might say they want the RPR. So then you've got to pay the $600, $700, $800 to get that done at your cost, right?
All right. Important to review title registrations and information. How are buyers and sellers responsible for tax adjustments upon closing?
Okay, so this is usually the best part of my job when I sit down with somebody who's buying and selling. And it's really not that complicated. It basically says that we're dealing with two things usually: property taxes and condo fees if we're dealing with a condo. I guess it would be agreed that if you've only lived there for 6 months, you shouldn't pay for 12 months worth of property taxes for that property, right? So the tax adjustment is how we kind of do that. So usually within the first 6 months, let's assume that seller isn't on the TIPS program and they haven't paid their taxes yet. So they've paid zero taxes, and the taxes are, let's say, $5,000 per year, right? So basically we have to look at what the day of closing is, and the seller, we basically prorate the full taxes for 100 days, and basically we credit that amount to the purchaser. So basically the seller has to pay the taxes for the time they lived in the property, and then the seller or the purchaser is responsible for the rest. So ultimately they get it deducted off of the purchase price, and then come June, the purchaser has to pay the full amount of taxes because they've already got the credit when they bought the property. If it's in the second half of the year, usually the seller has already paid all of the taxes. So then we have to do it the other way around. We have to credit the seller for the amount of time that the purchaser will have lived there. So the seller gets a credit, but to the purchaser's benefit, they don't have to pay any taxes that year. It's already paid. It's already been done. And then they just have to worry about the next year. So that's me. It makes sense in my head when I explain it, and I look at the numbers and I like to show people and do that. But is there any questions on that? Does that make sense? Condo fees are the same thing. They're usually due the 1st of each month. So if there's a closing on the 15th, we just have to credit the seller for that 15 days worth of condo fees. So.
Perfect. Okay. Can you explain a little bit about the foreclosure process, when it starts and how it goes through?
Yeah. It's a pain in the butt. So just pay your mortgage. I think that's the right way to. So foreclosure, obviously, probably a little bit more applicable for this group in terms of looking for foreclosure properties. But I'll kind of talk about the process first, and then maybe we'll talk about the risks afterwards of buying one of those properties. But essentially, a foreclosure property means the bank steps in. They make a application. The person in the position of owning the property or owning them, paying the mortgage, they will then get time to make up the difference, catch up on the payments and kind of start fresh. If that's not going to happen, then basically the bank takes the position that they are going to take over the title, and the title is put back into the bank's name. It's taken out of the owner's name into the bank's name, and then it goes through the whole process of potentially a judicial sale, right? Where it's put into the court system, and then there's a bidding process for people to buy it, investors usually, right? Does that answer that? That's a very quick synopsis.
Yeah.
It can take months and months and months to get from point A to point B because you're dealing with somebody's home, just like sometimes trying to kick out a tenant is very difficult.
So what I'm familiar with, and just from my perspective as an agent and investor, I'm getting a lot of calls these days with regards to, I want to look for foreclosure properties because those can be the best deals, when, maybe not so much in a lot of cases, because in Canada, as a foreclosure, you have to list at fair market value. And a lot of those times, the mortgage value, so they're not as negotiable, although you never know, and the best way to find out is to check the title, maybe see where the mortgage is, and it might be more negotiable when when it's still in the seller's name title, and probably negotiate it at that point. And usually the seller has about 3 months before the bank takes over and puts it in their name, and then they have to sell it to try and get as much as they can. It can be somewhat negotiable at that point, although your bank has been incurring legal fees, holding costs, and you're dealing with as is where it is when it comes to foreclosure property. So there's no guarantees on purchases. You just never know what might come up when you take over the property. And then it goes through the court system if the banks can't sell it. Right. And then those are harder to negotiate. They don't usually like conditions when it's the court selling the property. So we always like conditions as investors. And then I guess the fourth level is, if it doesn't get sold at that point, it goes to, if it was an insured one, it might go to CMHC or Genworth to sell. So yeah, it's a long process, and as an investor, I usually try and find sellers that are in distress. If they're facing foreclosure, that's a really good opportunity, or when they're about to face foreclosure, a really good opportunity to utilize strategies like rent-to-owns or agreements for sale. So I've done a couple of those last year where we just took over the mortgage and made the holding cost payments for the sellers, and they had to actually find another place to live. And we took over the property, and one's actually a rent to own, and another one's just a rent to hold.
Yeah, and that's a lot safer for the purchaser's end, because as soon as it goes into foreclosure, like Cindy alluded to it, you lose basically every single representation and warranty that's put into that real estate purchase contract that you could rely on. So it really is as is. So you could have looked at it a month ago and it could have been a nice property. I had a deal where, somebody had bought a foreclosure property. It was fine. They saw it, they liked it, they purchased it. 2 weeks later, they go to see it. Walls have been knocked out. There was just toilets have been knocked out. There's water damage everywhere. And there's nothing they can rely on because everything in that contract, it just looks like it's just struck. There's so much black. They just strike everything that you can rely on to go back on that property. And it's basically, they'll throw their hands up. You bought it. You agreed to the contract. It was your risk. So getting them right at that edge where they're about to go in and they're actually, still somewhat taking care of the property is really the best option.
It's good to market for those and find people in distress and try and help them out at the same time rather than take advantage of their situation and throw them under the bus to take it what you can. So like in one situation, like one of the properties I have in Sylvan where he was ready to leave the keys on the counter and start driving to Nova Scotia. Actually, Sean found this property and through networking, I was able to meet this guy and actually saved him from foreclosure and bankruptcy. And since then, he went to Nova Scotia and I've had this property cash flowing $300 per month, which isn't bad. And then he's since then been able to help qualify on a mortgage with his mom out in Nova Scotia as well. So he has great credit now and no bankruptcy or foreclosure and everyone's happy.
Mm-hmm.
Question for you, David. So specifically in the kind of pre-foreclosure space, so probably some of the best deals that I've found have been pre-foreclosures, right? The banks already sent notice and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Can you think of any, specific considerations that like for real estate investors who will be dealing in that space, things that they should really be watching for? Of course, it's going to close with a lawyer at the end of the day, anyways. But are there kind of any really situations that maybe you've seen or heard of where somebody's maybe gotten taken for a little bit of a ride in that situation?
Well, I think in those situations, and I kind of alluded to earlier, as long as you've got the realtor on your side and they're doing their job, you're going to be protected, right? In terms of, I don't know whether or not they're trying to say things are worth more. Or there's always those horror stories where you buy a house, there's, they open up a wall and there's a whole bunch of black mold and all of that stuff. So, really in those types of situations, just make sure you're getting a proper inspection done. That's certainly one thing that can really protect you. But you're also going to get the protection under that contract because they're going to have to say that they're giving you that property as it was seen and that it's going to be, there's no defects that were known, right? Now, ultimately, if there ends up being something that you say, oh, the seller must have known this, and they were at the edge of foreclosure and potentially at the edge of bankruptcy, well, your option is to sue them, and whether or not they have anything to go after anyways, that's a risk, right? So whenever you're trying to get that good deal, potentially there's risks, but get an inspection done, work with a good realtor, and that's basically the best you can do.
I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to elaborate on. I think you mentioned something about estate sales or anything that we'll need to consider. Or if there's something that stands out most that you think clients should know.
About estate sales or just about?
General.
In general, okay. Repeat that question. If there's just something
that stands out most that you feel clients should know. Like, do you have any stories or something that?
I have lots of stories, right? The big thing about issues with closing on our end is always the RPR. It's always an RPR. That's what it deals with. And if there's some conditions that are put into the contract that the realtor hasn't specifically set out what happens. So, for example, if there is some damage to some back steps and they say, okay, the seller will fix this. They will pay somebody to fix this. They will provide us with an invoice, and then it'll be done. So what happens if it doesn't get done? So I'd like the very specific instructions, right? So it shall be fixed by this date. Invoice shall be provided to the purchaser's lawyer, or there shall be a $800 holdback. Purchasers will be able to use that money, get it fixed themselves, and return anything that wasn't used. So that's important, right? So make sure when there's little things like that, just think about it down the road and say, what happens if it doesn't get done? Because I get so much stuff that says, oh, seller will fix electrical box. Well, what does that mean? Like, who's fixing the electrical box? How do I know it's done? Like, I'm not getting an invoice that it's been completed. There's no requirement that an electrician does it. And there's no requirement that there's a holdback of funds to fix the issue. So that means if it doesn't get done, client moves in, you've got to sue this person for $250 to get this thing fixed. It's just not realistic, right? So get it covered in the contract, and we'll be able to deal with it one way or another.
Wording it right is important.
Yeah. As far as estate sales, I mean, just be wary. One, the seller usually, will not be able to sell that property until they get a grant of probate, basically saying that they have the authority to act as the executor or the administrator of that estate. So if you're looking at a property that potentially is an estate sale, that's one of the first questions you want to ask is there a grant of probate? And if not, there's probably going to be some sort of condition that says the closing will take place 30 days or sooner after the probate certificate is granted. Because nobody can sign the transfer. So you can't move in and you can't get title if nobody can sign that transfer over to you. So just remember that. You have to have that probate before you can actually finalize the deal. And two, make sure you're thorough with those types of inspections and things like that, because sometimes those properties, you never know, and you probably have stories of hoarders and those types of things, because these are people that you likely weren't planning on selling, right? And then something happened and all of a sudden they've got to sell. So somebody's got to go in there and clean the house, and there could be animal droppings, and I've heard some horror stories of estate sales. It's worse than foreclosures sometimes. So just make sure you're working with somebody proper and you know what you're getting into with that.
Okay. I think that's all I got for questions. I don't know if anyone else had questions for David? Sean?
Go ahead.
Beneficial interest when joint venture partners buy property.
Yeah.
One goes on the mortgage, the other is in the background.
Uh-huh.
And the one mortgage has to go tick a box, or there's no beneficial interest. Do you run into those issues?
Do I run into the issues?
Issues with beneficial interest where...
Well, if somebody were coming to me and saying that they are going to have a beneficial interest, not be named on title, not be named on the mortgage, I would want to have an agreement done up separately from that to show that they have that interest and register it underneath the mortgage as a caveat, so that they can't sell it without that other person's consent, right?
How about the bank knowing about someone else having beneficial interest? Just a tick box usually on
the application?
On the mortgage documents or something when you go through the sales.
Yeah, that might be a Donnell question in terms of what steps. I mean, if the instructions come into me and say that we have to confirm that this person has a beneficial interest, then yes, it's on me to confirm it.
It's when the person says nobody else has a beneficial interest.
Right.
In fact, they have a silent partner.
That could potentially be like a mortgage fraud situation, right? So yeah, I mean, that would be a no-no. If the bank says no, there can't be, and there's somebody lurking in the background, that would be not a great idea.
I'm a mortgage broker too, and Danielle runs into that.
Yeah.
So usually on our commitments, we don't see that as a question.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to know with the paperwork that goes to the lawyer as that additional.
Not usually. I mean, usually we have to say, this is where the down payment's coming from. It's not being borrowed from any other person, right? So that's where it could come into that, where you're potentially breaching that if you're borrowing it from a third party and using that money for your down payment. I think that's where it could get caught.
The odd mortgage agreement does have I've seen.
Yeah.
It's always a sticky issue with people. The mortgage, if one doesn't qualify, that's lots of money, and the other qualifies for the money.
Yeah.
You have a question, right?
Yeah. I've gone into a lot of houses on private leads and looked at writing up a contract pretty much on the spot. Because if you write it up ahead of time, you can kind of have it correct, but then there's all these intangibles that you're not prepared for in the contract. Are there what's your best advice as far as things to watch out for? Like, are there ways that it can be done wrong that are going to be a problem, or is there things that like you would consider to be like must have, like make sure you don't screw up this part of the contract? I just always feel like I'm winging it a bit, and I have the skeletons to use.
Yeah,
but it never feels like
you're just talking about the standard residential real estate contract. Yeah.
Get off of.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the benefits of and I understand that, you know, as an investor, you want to save costs and do all those things. One of the advantages of using the realtor and having the realtor do up that contract is they are insured, right? And if there are any issues with that contract, you're going to be covered.
This is in a situation where it's a private, where I've really met you, and 20 minutes later, you're looking to sell, and you're probably doing it because of urgency or distrust of realtors. There's something going on that's making it that you want to sell to me today.
And I guess my advice would be to make sure that you know that contract, right?
Subject to lawyer review.
You can make it subject to lawyer review as well, if that's what you want to do. But to protect you, in terms of that, at that time, just make sure you know the contract. The big ones are the RPR clause, right? So if you don't want a new RPR, you've got to strike that, you got to initial it. And then if there's any additional things, you can put that in there, right? So if you do want them to paint the fence or do things like that, usually probably you don't. So, but I mean, I'm always, whenever a client comes to me and says, I would like you to draft up the contract, I'm always like, I'd rather a realtor do it because I don't want all the liability of that on me. But you just got to be aware that you don't have the protections that you would using a realtor, and just know the contract, know what it all means, right? In terms of what you're getting into. But usually that standard contract, if you're not striking a whole bunch out of it, it's going to protect both parties, right?
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, are you asking more about the terms, like in the contract, like to protect you as a buyer?
No, just more like let's say it's a good deal, and if the contract is done improperly, the contract would be voided when it's by the time it works its way to lawyers. And so it's just making sure that the contract is going to do what its purpose is, which is to make sure that in that moment we have an agreement, and that agreement's going to be honored, and that I would hate to have it where it's a good deal, and because of some poorly drawn up wording or whatever, that all of a sudden the contract is void, and the deal falls apart because of that.
Right. And I mean, that's going to depend on the situations too, right? In terms of whether or not somebody's going to be able to find a loophole in the contract that something happened.
Or if they want to.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're using that standard contract, it's been in place, it's been developed to kind of avoid those types of things. The only thing I guess you would want to make sure on if you are putting conditions, inspection, financing, those types of things, that you're giving yourself enough time to get those things done. Because if you don't get them completed, then it can just collapse. So.
Maybe you could explain the difference between conditions and terms.
The standard terms are basically just written in there. A condition is essentially you are putting in something that has to happen or something that has to be done before the contract can be completed, right? So the terms are basically saying the property is going to be in good standing condition, it's going to be in good repair, all those things. Condition is like you will fix the back step by this date and do it that way.
A condition, would that be more a term if you want it to be after you waive conditions, but before closing?
Yeah, so
sometimes you can't get something done for a condition to come off. It might take a month to do, so you put a term in there with a holdback and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Term in contract?
So that would be like to obtain financing. Is that what you're talking about? To obtain financing, do a
conditions are what you put onto a contract, things that you need to perform before you make it a firm offer. So if you need, to get financing, or if you need to do a home inspection,
right,
or need to perform certain things before you can be sure that you want to move forward with the sale with a deadline. So you want to make sure that you have financing, and if you can't get financing, then you can collapse the deal. So after you remove all your conditions, which is usually financing, home inspection, condo document review, that you make sure that you're good with all those items before you remove those conditions and make it a firm sale. And then terms are more so that are specific performances by either the buyer or seller to complete before possession, or things that need to be done, so they're not conditional to making the sale firm or
right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, that's a good question. So the terms are set that these things have to happen. They're basically being, and I mean, you say terms, I usually say also reps and warranties. So representations and warranties, which are basically saying we're guaranteeing these things are going to get done. Condition, like you said, this has to happen or the deal won't go through. Yeah. Or after those financing and home inspection, you can put additional conditions like repairs and things like that as well.
Yeah, yeah. You can write in a term like, let's say you have the home inspection and you find that there's leaks in the basement and things that need to be fixed, that you can require the seller to fix these items by a professional before possession date. And those are obligations that the seller must do. And if he doesn't do it, then he breaches the contract, and then it can be difficult to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've always heard that money needs to change hands in order for a contract to be legal and legitimate. Is there any ways that? And then the other question would be is maybe even further to like what Ryan was asking. Like, let's say you write up a purchase contract with somebody, completely private sale, just buyer seller type thing, and you decide not to give that person basically $0 deposit, but you effectively have their signature, they're agreeing to sell your property. What are the
like to sell it for nothing? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, like he's got a sale price, we got no deposit. No deposit.
No deposit. That's fine. I mean, you're still. I mean, it's not money changing hands. I mean, contract laws offer acceptance and consideration, right? And consideration doesn't have to be cash. It can be in lieu. It can be, and then eventually, right? You're saying, I want to buy your house. You've agreed to sell it to me, and on the closing date, I'll pay you this. So you've got your consideration. So.
Any other questions? No, very good. All right. Well, are you going to be around for?
I'll be around for a little bit.
And maybe the rest of. If you have any specific questions that you want to ask David, I'm sure he'll be around to answer anything. And also grab his card and maybe his fee sheet if you're interested in those as well.
Okay. Thanks a lot, David.
Thank you.
So very excited to introduce our next speaker. So Mr. Brian Banks. I actually went up to elementary school with Brian. And pretty sure we were at each other's like grade 3 birthday party or something like that. But Brian was actually good enough to come out and do basically his investor presentation for us. So it was a couple months ago. Brian actually did a presentation to the Edmonton Real Estate Investors Association group and was very well received and everything else. So reached out to him and asked if he would actually come out and speak to our group. Brian, you've been at this for about a year and a bit, kind of? 2 years full time. So fantastic to hear about his journey and everything else that started. So let's give him a round of applause and welcome him here. Just gonna mic you really quick. Yeah, all good. Thanks, bud. You got it. Yeah, so.
So thank you very much, Sean and the CAREIA group here and the board for inviting me out. I really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, like Sean said, we went to elementary school together and grew up and spent a lot of our school days together. And I don't think I've seen Sean actually since high school, which is now about 16 years ago. So pretty cool to be here and kind of our lives converge again. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here and honored. So thank you. I just share my story here with you guys and kind of where I started and how I got to where I am today. My real estate journey starts quite some time ago, back in 2004. I was 18 years old, and growing up as a kid, mostly my father always said to me, when you're 18, you're out and you're on your own. And but it came from a place of love and support to say, you're 18, you're a man, go figure this life thing out on your own, and we're here to support you. So I bought my first property when I was 18. It was a 3-bedroom townhouse, and my parents helped me with the down payment. I took a little bit of a different route. Instead of the college university, I became a carpenter. So the education funds that my parents had saved up, they helped me buy that first townhome. So when I took possession of that townhouse, I was an apprentice carpenter making $12 an hour at the time, 18 years old, and there was no way I could afford this townhouse. The only way that I could was with renters, right, helping me pay the bills. So when I got the keys that day and opened the door, I had a good friend of mine behind me, and we opened the door together, and he moved in with me, paying me $500 rent, and that was just enough to cover all the costs. Shortly after that, there was 2 more friends moved in. So there was 3 of my friends renting from me, 4 of us living in this 3-bedroom townhouse. At the time, we all had girlfriends, and there was 8 people living in this small little townhome. And there was dishes stacked to the ceiling. There was a foosball table in the dining room, and it was kind of chaotic. But they were all paying me $500 a month rent, and I was living for free. So at 19 years old, I was, mortgage free and living a pretty good life. But that was a big aha moment for me, and I started to realize at a young age how powerful this real estate and owning real estate and having renters and paying down mortgages can be. So I started learning everything I could. I read books, I went to courses, seminars, workshops, everything that I could do to learn as much as I could about real estate. So one of the books that really stands out to me, one of the first ones that I read, was Ken McElroy's ABCs of Real Estate Investing. And that book really inspired me to acquire more property and grow and build my wealth that way through real estate. Kind of the natural progression of an entrepreneur. A lot of people have probably heard of Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad. So after reading that book, I had to start a business. And the plan was to start a business and make money in a business and then invest in real estate for the long term. So being a carpenter, I went through my apprenticeship. And in 2007, I got my journeyman carpentry ticket. And 6 months after that, I started my own general contracting business. So residential, light commercial, general contracting. And that's where I was going to make my money and invest in real estate. So in 2008, I ended up selling that condo. I bought it in 2004 for $126,000. It peaked in 2007 at $350,000, and I was able to sell it in 2008 for $217,500. Because of my growing construction company, I needed more space, the garage to operate out of. So I literally bought a home just for the garage. I had a massive garage, small little home. I still own this property today, bought it in 2008, still own it today. So there's a fair bit of equity that has built up over the years. But living there and running the construction company, real estate took a bit of a backseat because I was working 100 plus hours in that business and not on it. And it basically controlled my life, and I didn't make a lot of time for much of anything. I was, woke up one day completely burnt out, and I got up to 8 employees, and they were all really reliable, trustworthy, quality employees. But I thought I had good systems and processes in place, and I decided in 2012 I'm going to take a trip to Australia and let this little machine operate on its own. Well, that was the beginning of the end. So I was 3 weeks in Australia. It was really tough to communicate back and forth with the time change and everything. So shortly after that, I was forced to close the doors due to some business hardships. And there I was, kind of in the spot where, what do I do next? So there we are in 2012. I had I was looking for a job. I ended up finding a job up north with Leadcore Industrial. Landed a job as a project coordinator, and that's where I worked from 2012 to 2017. My plan to go up north, I had two goals in mind. One was to clean up the mess that I left behind, the business hardships, and two was to buy another property. So that was a 5-year plan, and in 3.5 years, I was able to accomplish that through just discipline and putting my head down and one step at a time. So I just realized I completely forgot to introduce myself with where I come from. so I don't know if we want to back up, but my wife, 2012 is when I met my wife, Larissa. We now have a son, 8-month-old boy named Asher, and I'm born and raised in St. Albert. We live in St. Albert today. So 2012, started working up north. 2014, we bought our primary residence that we still live in today. So the plan was to get that house, develop a legal basement suite, and start renting that out. So what we did, that property we still live in today, that was very foundational to our portfolio and our success today. What we did, we bought that with a mortgage plus improvements mortgage. So we renovated the main floor, and when we renovated it, we moved in. We got $38,000 back from the mortgage plus improvements, and we went and put that money into developing the basement suite. The basement suite cost us $54,000, and in 2015 that was completed, and we started renting it out for $1,300 a month. Fast forward to today, that $54,000 investment into that basement, generating $1,300 a month, is now paid off. The 54 grand is back, and it's now an infinite return. On top of that, we refinanced that house, our house, primary residence, and it has allowed us to pull the HELOC out and purchase a home just this past September, another legally suited house. So those plays back in 2015 are still affecting us today, really. So 2015 is basically when I accomplished my 5-year plan of going up north. Come January of 2017, ironically enough, 2 months shy of my 5-year plan being totally complete with 5 years up north, and 1 week shy of our wedding, I was laid off. So I lost my job at pretty good income, but they just, all the loyalty and hard work that I showed them, they just gave me the boot, and there's the door. And a week before our wedding, my wife married an unemployed man. So we got married, we went on our honeymoon, and the first thing we did when we got back was buy another property. The last thing I thought I would be doing when I didn't have a job was buying another property. But one person believed in me and was able to loan me the money to buy this house and do the renovations. Buy and hold, we suited out that house, and we still hold it today. It cash flows very well. One of our better performing properties. But I just want to stress the importance of people in this business. People are so important, and one person can really change your life. So groups like this, the first thing I did when I got back from the honeymoon and started on this journey, on my full-time real estate investing journey, the first thing I did was go to groups like this and meet people and get educated. That's basically step number one. If I were to go back and do it all over again, I would do it the same way, because people have helped me so much in my life and my real estate investing. There's people in this room that have helped me so much. So I'm extremely grateful for that. And that is the number one thing is people is so big in this business. So we went on to develop that suite house, and since then, since the layoff, we've been able to acquire 3 more suited houses and fix and flip 3 more houses as well. So it's kind of just, after receiving that news of the layoff and processing that information, it was kind of like, this isn't the worst thing that could possibly happen. This might be a blessing in disguise, and it actually is maybe a little kick in the butt that I needed, or, sometimes people need. It's the luxury of no options, right? Your back's against the wall and you're forced to figure it out. So that was it. Ever since then, it's, I've never looked back, and it's just been building. We're at the point where we've exhausted all of our own resources right now, with money and mortgage qualifying, that we are looking to build our portfolio, continue growing with partners. And that's ultimately where you get to a point, most real estate investors they hit that wall where they run out of resources and need to grow with partners. So that's kind of in a nutshell my journey, and that's where we're at today. There's there's a few people that I've heard say that this is, they're just learning, they're just trying to start and take action. And I just want to, stress that you're in the right place and you're doing the right things right now by coming to these kinds of groups and learning as much as you can, meeting people. There is almost everyone in this room, as far as key team members that you need in this business, mortgage brokers, realtors, lawyers, there's accountants that you need, contractors, inspectors. The team is pretty big, but the team is what makes it all happen. So you can't do it all yourself, and you need to rely on these types of people. So relationships is the key to everything. That's pretty much it. I mean, in a nutshell, we're where we're at today, and building our suited portfolio and continuing with fix and flips. Flips are where income comes from. I lost my job. That replaces my income, and building suited houses for long-term buy and hold, which is ultimately retirement, and going to allow us the things that we, the whole reason why we do this, and allow us to enjoy the things that we love to do.
Here's just a couple questions for Brant. So in your business from where you're at now, so if you think of, I guess, kind of all the major struggles or some of the skills that you've had to develop and that type of thing. So I know, like, even for myself, there were some things I walked into the business that I was very good at, and some things I wasn't terrible at. Training specific to that, and in order for the business to grow. I guess, what would you say, from the skill set you walked into it, what were your biggest hurdles that you had to kind of leap over to biggest fears you had to face in order to be able to actually execute the plan?
Being a carpenter by trade, it was very natural for me to go into fixing homes. I've done that most of my life. Some of the big mindset is a huge one. Mindset, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And getting your mind right is so crucial to this, and believing in yourself, having the courage, that was a hurdle. Where the money's going to come from, that was a big hurdle. I didn't have money to do it, but I was able to have one person believe in me, and it's just kind of gone from there. Time management is a huge one, like just scheduling and blocking out your time, taking time off. Like I said, in my business, I woke up, I was working 100 plus hours a week in that general contracting business, and it controlled my life. So time management, I really learned a lot there, and booking the time off. Sundays is now a non-working day for my wife and I. My wife's a realtor, so she helps me a lot too. But we use Sundays for reflecting on the past week and planning out the next week ahead, and making sure our goals are aligned and we're on the right path, and going in the same direction together. Spousal support is so huge as well. If you're not aligned with your spouse, it can make it very difficult. So making sure that you're on the same page and working towards the same goal is huge. I think those are some of the biggest. I've had, property inspections, thorough walkthroughs are a huge learning curve, and making sure you catch maybe not all, but most of the things ahead of time. I've been hit with some pretty hard surprises, but you just improve and get better, right? Keep focused on your craft and always improving and always learning.
One of the things you mentioned is that kind of at this point you basically exhausted your ability to qualify for mortgages. Most of your capital is already kind of deployed and everything else. You had mentioned the one person that basically took a risk on really catapult your business in there. What's your primary capital raising and joint venture partner attraction strategies at this point?
Honestly, I don't think it's a huge secret, but just be yourself. It's tough without having a track record. Some investors like to see that, but if you can show some integrity and some trust and be yourself, and there is an element of risk for sure there, but that's what I found. It's starting to come now. Attracting partners and capital is starting to come, but trust is, just being straight with people, being honest, I think is a huge part of it.
So I see a lot of the fix and flips not always turn out exactly as planned, right? There's some people even in this room that are quite successful at it, but I see a lot go the other way. Mm-hmm. So what has been your experience with your fix and flips? Did you make as much as you were hoping you were going to make? And any tips that you wish you had known beforehand? Or
good question. Yeah, I'm constantly trying to reevaluate and assess what I just did and what just happened to get better. I haven't done one flip yet that I made the money that I thought I was going to. And me being a carpenter, a general contractor experience, I believe that's my strong category is the renovations. Where I think it needs to get better, and it's so true that you make your money on the buy. You get paid when you sell, but it's so crucial to buy right. And that is an area where skills need to be honed for finding these great deals, negotiating these great deals. We talk about it with these distressed situations, but coming from a place of help, definitely not taking advantage of these people. But coming from truly from a place of help and saving them is a win-win situation. But yeah, I still have not hit the numbers that I've planned to. But it's always been profitable. There's never been a loss, which is unfortunate because that can happen very easily and very fast. But I think taking it one step at a time and not going too big too fast is also a big part of it. Back in my construction business, I scaled up pretty quickly to 8 people. And, like I said, I thought, I basically self-imploded. So one step at a time and the right next step at the time. So
outside of your experience and your skill set and what would you attribute your biggest learning through, whether it's books or formal education, any of that?
Definitely doing it. There's only so much you can learn until you actually implement what you learn. Knowledge is power, but knowledge is only potential power if you don't utilize it, right? So there's a point where you can learn and go to groups and read books and courses and all that, but there comes a point where you do need to just implement and do it. And you don't. It's the theory versus the practical, right? So through actually doing it is where you learn the most. So I encourage anyone that is just on the fence or thinking about it, or, you know, maybe scared to take that first step. There's definitely a lot of fear that holds people back. But, you know, just go for it.
I believe in that too, like taking action, surrounding yourself with people that can support you and help you make the right decisions. But would you say there are particular books or courses that you've taken that really helped you?
100%, yeah. There's lots of courses and lots of groups. I mean, RAIN is one of them. That's more buy and hold. They're starting to get into creative strategies. Barry McGuire and Donna McGuire teach a really good course called the Rapid Cash Program, AFS course, Agreement for Sale course. They've taught me a ton. It all depends, I guess, what you're looking to learn. But you know, there's some pretty big players in the flipping game that teach a lot of, you know, the good ways to do it and the right ways to do it, and, you know, very business minded and guide you. I'm part of mastermind groups that I find you get a ton of value from small intimate groups like this. You can actually have conversations with people, and if you come here with a focus in mind of what you're looking for or who you're looking for to help, you know, assemble your team, you can come meet these people and just talk to them, right? Some of these bigger networking events, you don't really have the opportunity. It's someone on a stage speaking, you know, to a bunch of people. Books, I mean, there's networking. People is everything in this. As far as courses go, yeah, there's tons. It's endless. I mean, but, you know, specific ones, yeah.
Do you have in your purchasing or flipping, have you run into like a biggest like surprise or unanticipated thing that you had to navigate?
Yeah. So this is a big lesson, and this goes through the importance of due diligence and thorough walkthroughs, inspections. I purchased a home. I trusted it, so it was my old babysitter's parents' home. So I knew them personally. They live on the same street as my parents do today. And they were hoarders. So the basement was covered in stuff, right? So it didn't allow me the opportunity to, or I didn't dig deep enough to look at the foundation. And there was a whole bunch of structural cracks and repairs that needed to be done. It ended up costing me $15,000 that was unbudgeted for, unallowed for. You know, so as soon as I took possession of the property and they left a lot of the stuff in the home, moved a few things, and it was so a little bit stressful and scary, but you know, those things you learn through doing it, you know, and you just get better, constantly improve. Like, I don't want to scare anyone, but that due diligence is definitely huge. So
would you do your own inspections, generally speaking, or do you hire a property inspector?
I still do, and I'm a contractor.
Yeah.
I'm a contractor, and, you know, I should know a house top to bottom, and I do very well, absolutely. But it's just that extra layer, right? And it's an extra set of eyes, and a third-party inspector, I mean, it's cheap sorry, I don't like the word cheap. It's low cost effective. $500, you know, can get you, you know, maybe see some things that I don't know everything. That's another team member that you need to rely on, right?
But in my experience, they won't move stuff anyway. Like, how would you see that, right? Even if you did hire the inspector, how are you going to get through a problem such like you're describing?
There's some evidence that was showing on the outside. Parging crack. There's definitely, as I got further into it, I was pretty disappointed in myself that I missed it.
But they aren't going to move other people's personal possessions.
No. And there comes a time some of these houses are full overhauls. right? So you're replacing the furnaces, the hot water tanks, the roof, like you're doing everything. So an inspection isn't super crucial if you're planning to do such a big project because everything's new, right? There's things that you can't see behind walls and moisture, but I mean, if you're opening everything up, you know, most foundations are cracked. You got to allow for that. They're, you know, concrete cracks, especially off corners of windows or off beam pockets. That's the weakest point. They crack. So you need to allow for that, you know. Some houses you go into, you budget for, you know, fixing 3 cracks, but there's 10, you know, but you can only catch so much, right? But that's why you allow contingencies in your budget, you know, 10%, 5-10% to make up for any surprises.
You spoke about the importance of spousal support and having a person on your team and everything else. I remember a conversation I had with a gentleman out of Edmonton. He actually came to one of the Step Cardio events that we did in Winnipeg. Flew all the way out to Winnipeg. And one of the things that he said is like, "Yeah, I really want to do this, but my wife will kill me if I kind of go down this road." And again, I know your wife is a realtor and she's part of your team, part of your business.
For sure, yeah.
Any specific, I guess, challenges you guys have had to kind of go through, like, you know, you're deciding you're going to do this as a team and stress on the relationship?
There's definitely a stress burden on the relationship.
Why is my house not sold yet, wife?
Yeah, we had that conversation this morning. Reduced price today, yeah. So, yeah, like, I mean, it's just so critical to communicate, you know, to make sure you both are aligned before you take on an endeavor like this, right? There's definitely financial strain. There's, you know, long hours. There's, you know, like anything worthwhile, there's lots of hard work that goes into it. You know, she works for me as, you know, we're married, obviously. She's, you know, I'm her client. She's my realtor. So we're pretty good at keeping that professional element in there. And it really helps, like I said, on Sunday. I mean, you know, as long as we're open and honest and transparent with each other, which we absolutely are, you know, we support each other all the way through. You know, this has been my dream, you know, for a long time, and she, you know, supports it. So, that answer your question? Yeah.
Do you have a financial goal for yourself, or what is your why?
I have 2 financial goals, and my why is not anything to do with money. My why is freedom, and freedom as properties is my why is right in there. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this, is for freedom, time, options, choice to do really what I want when I want, without an approval of anybody, really, to spend more time with my family. I feel like it's my obligation to provide my son with a good quality of life and teach him how to be confident and have the courage and wisdom to, you know, take on whatever he chooses in his life. So a lot of my why is based around family, and spending time. Time is our most valuable commodity, right? So we like to travel, you know, and do more of these things. We camp, we ski, you know, we bike, you know, all those things we enjoy. Simply walking the dog, you know. Some financial goals definitely are to grow the portfolio to $10,000 a month in cash flow. That equates to about 20 properties, suited properties, if they're cash flowing $500 a month. My focus is suited houses. So yeah, that's, you know, as far as the yearly salary, I lost a $130,000 job up north, and fixing and selling homes is a replacement for that.
So like buy and hold 20 properties and comfortable cash flow.
Yeah, 20 properties at $500 cash flow, right? Now, when you start introducing partners that are 50-50, now it's 40 properties, right? So it's a little bit daunting, but I set a realistic, you know, this is by age 40, that's what I want. So that's what I'm going towards, right? And work towards that every day. And You know, I'm pretty small the way I operate. I manage all my projects. I have 0 employees, and I subcontract what I need to subcontract, and I still do self-perform a lot of the work. So I realize there's a limit and a cap to that. I can only produce so much, but I'm okay with that right now. I'm fine with that, right?
Anybody have any questions for Brian?
Yeah.
You mentioned you bought your first
2004 is the first property. Yeah. Yeah, that 3-bedroom townhouse with 8 people living in it.
So
I was living.
So you were kind of working with real estate or learning about it in high school already while you were still in high school, or was that not even?
No, I was kind of brought. My dad kind of is a bit of my foundation for financial literacy. He was big on investing, big on stocks, big on real estate, owned real estate. So he kind of gave me that path that when you're, ever since I can remember, is when you're 18 years old, you're out. So he helped me buy that, or my mom and dad, my parents both helped me with the down payment on that first condo. It wasn't until I had 3 friends living with me paying me rent, and I was living for free at 19 years old, is when the wheel started turning, and I, was realizing how powerful this can be. Is when I really started learning about it. So I remember, being a second-year apprentice carpenter in the lunchroom, reading real estate books, reading everything I get my hands on, take courses and seminars, everything I could, meet people. But it took a back seat when I, started my construction company. So it wasn't until I went up north working in 2012 that I really got back into it and took it seriously and got that second property. So since there, now we have 10 doors, 6 properties, 4 suite houses, that bungalow with no basement with the big garage that I bought in 08, and my wife's condo. So.
Well, then the fact that you're doing this particular market like it's a pretty tough real estate market all around. So the fact that you fix the plus over there.
I stick to single family there. We've tried to renovate a suite house and sell it in St. Albert, and it didn't work. We ended up keeping it. And I've watched other people try to sell suite houses in St. Albert, and I love to hold properties in St. Albert, but they don't seem to sell suite houses in St. Albert. It's a bedroom community. It's a family community that St. Albert wants the single family product. So if I am flipping a house in St. Albert, it is a single family. Yeah. If I am suiting a house, most of my intention now with suited houses is to hold. They're just too good to sell. They're great portfolio additions. They're little gems of, suited house portfolio additions. So they cash flow. The cash flow is where the freedom comes from. So collecting them and building the portfolio with suited houses is what you want. So I stick to North Edmonton and St. Albert. I believe you don't need to go far to find opportunity. It's right in your backyard. And, there's lots of it around. So
where do you live? Do you live in St. Albert or right here?
I live in St. Albert. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just drove up here today. So first time coming to this meeting group. So
do you mind
thanks.
asking how old you are?
Yeah. 33.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
So
You've come a long way.
it's,
A short time.
yeah, I mean, maybe to some, yes, but to some, no. But, I'm good with where I'm at. And, it's just, being clear on what you want and what you're after is super important to have a clear goal, right? Instead of, you'll be floating around and do under the umbrella of real estate, there's lots of different strategies, right? And you can go try to do a lot of different strategies and really maybe do a lot of them poorly and not get too far maybe. But
If you focus on one and what works and stick with it, if you find what works and systemize it and repeat it, that's what does it.
Find your niche and work it.
For sure, yeah, and hopping around when you master that, or until then maybe explore other things. There's lots of noise, lots of distraction out there, and it's so important to stay focused, right? You can get lost in deep rabbit holes, and being clear on that and focused. Does anyone have any other questions? I do have some closing comments that I just wanted to make sure that I did say and didn't leave out. So this is all mostly about mindset. Is a huge part of it. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. You have to believe in yourself. You have to have courage and willing to take risks. Focus and discipline action. The next right step, one step at a time. We touched on shiny objects and distractions and noise. Just forget about them and focus on where you're headed. And you'll end up doing 10 things poorly instead of one thing really good. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable, big part of it. I'm not the most comfortable up here right now, but it grows you. It grows character. Some of these hardships and adversities that we face are some of the best things for us, and blessings in disguise. You can really learn from them. They're not failures. They're mistakes to learn from. So
awesome. Thank you, Brant.
Thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it.
Just a quick comment, and Brian and I obviously have some catching up to do from not talking for almost 16 years. But if there's one piece of financial advice that I would ever give anybody who's starting out, and Grace, maybe even just kind of further to your question that you had asked, when people ask me what was single-handedly the best financial decision you ever made, I always tell people that, and I got a little bit of a later start at it than you did, but in 2008, I bought a brand new single family home in Westlake and Red Deer, and I rented rooms, right? And very much similar to you. I mean, I think at the time I was renting them for $625 a piece, kind of thing, right? So I was pulling in literally $2,500 a month in rent, renting out 4 bedrooms in the house. My girlfriend at the time, my now wife, was even paying me rent at that point in time. So. Yeah. So if there's one piece of advice that I would ever give anybody, particularly if you're gonna get into it, start with that. One thing that's amazing is that when you are a live-in landlord in those types of situations, you will learn so many things, and those skills will help you further on, right? If you've never had to deal with conflict management type situations, or whatever the case it is, you're gonna learn how to do it pretty quick, especially when that person is living in the same house as you. So. Yeah. So fantastic. Yeah. And again, thank you very much, Brant. That was really inspiring. So yeah, I think you struck a lot of chords with probably a handful of people in the room, and it's fantastic to hear the journey you made thus far. So we're basically in the wrap up at this point. One of the things that I did want to do is kind of open up to the room. If anybody does have any open discussions, pieces on anything that has been brought up here today, if you did come here specifically with a question that you wanted to kind of just pose to the room, anything else, now's a great time to do it. The other thing would be is that if you do currently have a deal that you're working on, or one that you'd like to see, if perhaps there's a partnership available in the room for that, this is also a great time to do that as well. So I guess I'll just kind of open it up to the room at this point and see if anybody has anything they'd like to bring up. Cindy? Oh, sorry, Dana. Yeah.
And one of Casey's, pull it up on MLS. So my assistant and friend of mine, she actually has a home for sale in Lacombe. She just posted it a couple weeks ago, but she already has another home that she wants to buy. So she's at the point where she's like, let's just get this out of here as quickly as we can. So she knows a lot. She knows about a lot of the rent-to-own stuff that I've done for some of my clients, and she asked me if I can help her structure her home in a similar way.
What's the address?
23 Bruns, Bruns. Yeah, so she asked me if we can look at it, and I meant to bring a spreadsheet that I had done up, but it was a little bit tied up beforehand. So I'll just try to recall the numbers off the top of my head. So it was appraised for $330 at the end of 2017. In summer of 2017, the end of 2017, and then in 2018, she had a small little fire in her furnace room. So, like, very little fire, but the smoke had gone through the house, so the whole house had to be professionally remedied, right? So they did all new drywall in the place, all new kitchen, cabinets, countertops, flooring, like every single thing in this home is brand new. The ductwork, the air conditioning, the furnace, like everything is brand new. It's got attached front double garage. It's so it had been appraised at $330 before everything was all brand new. Now she said she's willing to just let it go. She told me for $305. So I think it's listed on here at
$319.
right?
So yeah.
So she could go as low as $305, but she is hoping to just have someone buy it right out. We're going to start marketing it as a rent to own right away. So hopefully we get some bites right away, but we do need an investor to pick it up. It would just be buy, hold, hopefully we can get a rent to own in there. So down payment, you're going to need about $62,000 minus we're hoping for a $10,000 deposit on the rent to own. The rent portion, $1,600 is fair market rent, and we ran our numbers at $2,100, so somebody would be credited back $500 a month towards their down payment. So at the end of it, in 3 years' time, the ROI on it is 22%. So if anyone's interested in something similar to that, whether it's a property or a complete package deal, if we pre-approve some rent-to-own tenant buyers and we get a rent-to-own buyer in there that's all pre-qualified and help set that up, the ROI on it is 21%. So let me know, grab a card. I can email you the actual spreadsheet that I've done up and some details. Okay?
Okay, so this is a RAIN, Real Estate Intelligence Network, who I'm a member of, and a couple of you in the room are RAIN members as well. So this is a good event that they're putting up, I believe, for the first time. And if you scroll down a little bit, it's at the Red and White Club in Calgary. Let's pull this up here. May 11th, 2019, from 9 a.m. till 6:30. So it's a full day event at the University of Calgary Red and White Club. Basically, it's an opportunity to listen to other people's deals. Not sure if they're taking in other people to present any of their individual opportunities as well. I still have to look that up. And then there's like a Dragon's Den thing from what I think I know. You just present your deal in front of a big panel, and I think some of them might, if it's a good enough opportunity, they might be able to fund some capital into those kinds of deals. I find those very supportive because sometimes they let you know how you can make that deal maybe more better or how you can make it more lucrative or attractive when it comes to presenting. I found that very useful. I think Holly Reeves went to one recently and she got some really great advice as to how to really engage investors and attract them into a deal that she presented. So for this, it's about $97 for the public, but I think in this I'm allowed to bring 5 members for free, or not 5 members, 5 guests for free. So if you're interested in attending something like this, you can just let me know, email, phone, call me, or talk to me after this, that if you want to come, I can register you to attend this kind of event. Even though I might not be looking for a deal to fund myself or maybe even present a deal myself, I love the networking, and that's huge. Meet people with capital, meet people with deals, joint venture people. At the last SOS event that I went to with 5 other members in our group, I met one gentleman with 300 doors, another gentleman with 500 doors, and we had drinks after, and they had so much stories to tell, and I just learned boatloads of information, like people like Chris Davies, a commercial real estate agent in Edmonton. He had a good conversation with me for a whole hour and a half, and I learned so much from him. So huge if you meet pretty proficient people in the industry at events like this. So let me know if you're interested. Okay? I'm good.
So yeah, I guess based on behalf of all of CAREIA, thank you very much for attending. The next meeting is currently scheduled for May 11th. It will be announced on both the meetup as well as a Facebook group and everything else. Again, as a last minute plug, if you're still on the fence about getting a membership, or you have some questions or whatever it is, just please feel free to come up and ask myself, Danelle, Cindy, some of the members in the room and everything else. They can inform me on that. And other than that, you're free to stick around here for a little bit just while we're wrapping up and hopefully network and take it from there. So
I actually just realized that this event is on May 11th too, so that might be a little bit of a conflict there.
well, you have to come to CAREIA. So. Okay, thanks a lot, guys.